All right, welcome. Even though it's hard to even fathom the year 2022 is um, going to be, here for everybody. It's going to be a long time getting there, but the process does start early, and as we all know, the process has taken a bit of a crazy turn. But every year, it always seems to be something new and out of the ordinary. So it's really almost no different than any other year. But at the same time, I think one of the good things for the class of 2022 is you'll have the benefit of being able to come upon this with eyes a little wider open and just a lot more knowledge at your disposal. So you'll have a better way to scout out, quote unquote, the opposition, uh, before it really gets to like the hard, let's say the hard part, but really like, applying along those lines. But, right now, this is a good time, to start, this endeavor. A number of things that we use with our students is Naviance, Naviance students. So basically it's an online college advising platform that is free for students and parents. The way to access it at this point in time is to go through the SMR portal, and there's a green rectangular button that says Naviance. Students should have single sign-on options at this time. That may change, but that information will be communicated. If you are at this, if you get kind of a teal background, that you're in the right spot. And that's what and of course there's more information that will be on the Naviance homepage for students. But I think it's good for students to kind of to see this, to become a lot more familiar with, especially whether it's colleges I'm thinking about, careers along those lines, about me. What is really great as part of this Naviance platform is that students can construct a resume, and it's just not like a blank Word document piece of paper. It actually has, this is how you build it. You select a new entry. Once you put stuff in, you can rank order it, move it around, save it as a PDF. You can even save it as a PDF that you can upload it to your Common application next year. So what's good is like you can start on it and keep adding to it. And I would highly recommend using this as a good template to use when constructing your resume. Students last year were also asked to do the career cluster finder to see how their interests and their aptitudes may turn into perhaps jobs or careers. Students also have the opportunity to put colleges in this section that they're thinking about. By no means that one has to apply there, but it's a good way to kind of use this as a storage space for any schools that one might have, in consideration, at this point in time. One of the big forms that I'm asking students to fill out, sooner the better, so I can start doing individual appointments, is a college search information form. It's about 17 questions long. By no means I'm going to hold you to this, that you have to, what you fill out this year, you're going to have to use that as a major when you apply to colleges. But it gives me just some sort of insight to see where students are at this juncture. And it's fairly easy to do. But like I said, like the sooner I can get these completed forms, the sooner I can start scheduling appointments. And actually, I hope to start scheduling next week, Monday or Tuesday. It all depends on how the schedules work out. But I want to start with this process. And this is like the main form that I use when I start advising students. Students were also asked to do the career interest profiler as well too. It's based on Holland's interest inventory in terms of not so much specific jobs or careers, but what their strengths are and how to best utilize and leverage those strengths into possible careers down the road. And again, this is free. I've taken it, and it yields sometimes surprising results. So again, this is something like I use when advising students. I think probably the best thing to do at this stage is to organize your search. This PowerPoint and other readings will be put on the Enrichment Friday archive, so you can have access to it. But this is not, at this stage, if you're taking notes, please write these down. I just think sometimes, all too often, I think students just blindly start with number three and then go to one, then to two, then to five, then to four. So I think by having it somewhat organized, you're able to engage this process in a little bit more of a normalized fashion. First and foremost is resources and research. Second is to do an internal search. Um, Again, I think a lot of people like want to look at colleges right away, but I think it's best to know what drives you, what motivates you, what your strengths, what are you really looking for, and then turn an eye to the colleges and universities. Applications, which are basically assignments that you can ask somebody to help you with, and also how to pay for it all. There's lots of data information, search engines, websites you can draw your information from, but these are four that I think are really good, and they're all for free. College data is great in terms of, say, if you have an interest in Lycoming College, you bring up Lycoming College, you can find a 20-page report on that school. It's also a great search engine for scholarships, not only for college, but also graduate school. The college scorecard gives people opportunities to compare and contrast colleges. College results online is one of my favorites because you're able to plug in different colleges and universities and compare them back and forth in terms of like 4-year graduation rates, 5-year graduation rates, 6-year graduation rates, retention rates, number of full-time enrolled students. So if you're a nerd like me and like kind of comparing and contrasting, you'll love college results online. Another really interesting data set that a lot of people don't use, but it's been around for a while, it's the common data set. And this is, every college has to have one. So basically in a search engine, just type in common data set, insert the college name, and it'll give you a report of the most recent year of that college in terms of what the calendar is like, how many students applied, how many students graduated with an engineering degree. I mean, it's, again, not similar to college results online, but just a really, just a treasure trove of information that is, you can always trust. So yeah, when it comes to your internal search for a college, I mean, there's tons of factors to consider, but one that drives the vast majority of students, and the one I always ask is, what do you like learning about? It could be anime, it could be civil engineering, it could be whatever you want. But I use that as one of the key pieces of the search engine, of your search engine, because in the end, that's how students choose a school, like the academics. I think a lot of students neglect this part of the search process, or it's not as big because they'll like, oh, I'll figure it out when I get there. It's like, I'd rather have you maybe start trying to figure it out. You may end up changing your major. As you can see, it happens. But when students change their major twice, thrice, 4 times, that just adds more semesters, years on to a college degree, and you incur more, you pay out more, you incur more debt, you forego, savings and investing and earning salary. So yeah, it's kind of helpful to do your research, and especially for the STEMs, because just from my experience at the University of Delaware, we would see a lot of students look at engineering, and they start taking the 3-course sequence in calculus, no matter how good they were in high school, and they decide, business, that sounds a little bit better. So that's why it's important to do some good research. Some other good factors to look at, even just outcomes, like what do colleges say in terms of percentage of students going off to graduate school or who are gainfully employed within 6 months upon graduation. So you might see that stat a lot, but dig a little deeper, because a lot of those are based on surveys. So one college might send out, say on average, like 100 surveys, yet only 16 come back. So 16% return rate isn't that great. But if it's like, they say, well, 89% of our graduates return their survey, and this is what they said, that's a pretty high rate. And that's probably a pretty good idea in terms of what they're doing, after graduation. How long does it take to get your degree? A 4-year degree takes 4 years. Not to be trite, but when you look at graduation rates, again, you have to look at it. Is it a 4-year graduation rate, 5-year, or most of the graduation rates that you see published are 6-year graduation rates. So if 3 out of 5 kids get out in less than 5 years, that's pretty good. And even from first year to second year, what's the retention rate from freshman to sophomore year? 4 out of 5 students say it's an academic, social, financial fit. Then they're happy. They're going to come back. Nationwide, it's around 75%. And this does play out over the years in terms of graduation rates, in terms of from first year to second year, but also down the road. So, and you'll see in a little bit that actually going to a private college university might be a wiser investment, even though it costs more. All right, so what do you use to see what's out there? Numerous search engines. Yeah, look at college university websites. These days, they have a lot of virtual sessions. I've done tons of webinars from tons of different schools. So it's a really great opportunity to really get a lot of great information now. So when you are able to start viewing schools in person, all the hard work you've done ahead of time, whatever you've read and seen, does it match up when you actually see it? Also, read anything that you get, especially from colleges and especially from me over the years. But also ask questions, like ask really pointed questions. Students, feel free to come in, write stuff down, come in, ask questions day in and day out. That's the only way. And you might be seeing stuff that I've never seen before. And plus your vantage point is a lot different than mine. So it's ironic that in a year's time, literally to the day, I want to say the window closes for applying to college, but it's probably a good idea to get stuff in by this time, if not earlier. As I mentioned, applications are pretty much an assignment. Students know their name, where they live, their mailing address. So applications are fairly easy. The questions students have, juniors, one of the best questions, like how soon can I start? You can start now. Maybe not right now, but yeah, maybe December, maybe January. Students can create a common application account now as a junior. Then over the summer in 2021, it'll roll over to your senior year. So you can put your name in, your mailing address, your Ryken email address, just some general demographic information in there. That way you can start working on it now. Colleges will ask in terms of how are you applying to us? And there you will see there's lots of nomenclature when it comes to that, whether it's restrictive or non-restrictive. Maybe just to kind of point out a few of them, like rolling applications roll into a college makes a decision and rolls back out with a decision 4 to 6 weeks. Some schools like Maryland is priority consideration. Their deadline is November 1st. So, anytime you see a priority consideration, you should apply by that date. Doesn't lock you in, doesn't make you have to go there, but just if you see a school that is like that, yeah, that's the deadline. The difference between early action and early decision is it's restrictive versus non-restrictive. Early action is they just make a decision and they let you know you don't have to commit. Early decision is you have to commit. We also ask that students submit transcript request forms online through Naviance at least 3 weeks prior to the deadline, whatever that college deadline is. Deadlines are absolute. A lot of this process is based on timing of things. So when things need to happen, they need to happen. I tell students October 1st for you, 2021, that is your deadline for applying to colleges. If you do it October 2nd, are you too late? No. But make October 1st, 2021, your deadline for submitting all of your college applications, which means you have to do the work ahead of time to get it done by then. Because seniors are getting acceptances even now. So do you want to be in that group or do you want to leave it to chance down the road? So again, a college might have February 1st as their deadline. I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. But if you want your application to be reviewed sooner, you want to have a better chance for scholarships sooner, you want to be considered for financial aid sooner, this is what has to be done. What are they going to look at? They're going to look at basically, first and foremost, one sheet of paper, and that is the student's transcript. First year, second year, third year, and into senior year. Grades and rigor of courses. So as juniors, kind of keep this in mind as you start thinking about courses for your senior year. Testing is going to be interesting, especially for the class of 2022. This year, a lot of schools have gone test optional. Some are test blind. The difference is test blind is they're not even gonna look at it. Test optional is if you have it, we'll take a look at it. If not, we won't use it. It's rather interesting to see that the state of Florida is mandated. The legislature said you need tests, but because of nobody's been able to take tests, a lot of colleges their applications are down at least 50% in some places. So yeah, if there are tests to be had, they'll use it, but it's not going to be, as you can see, they're not going to make the decision. They're generally going to confirm it. But at this stage, we'll see what March is like, and in terms of May and June. But even now, I would say for the class of 22, register, because I've been telling seniors already this fall is that you might need to take you might be able to take a test in March or May or June. And like, why? It's like, well, for admissions purposes, scholarship reasons, and maybe even course placement in the fall semester, wherever you go. So if the 2022s are going to be competing for slots for the 2021s for testing spots, yeah, sooner the better to register. And as part of it as well too, students have an opportunity to have their scores sent up to 4 colleges as part of the registration fee. I would say definitely do that. Students will come back and say, well, what if my scores are low? I'm like, well, what if they're really high? It's part of, it's free, so why not do it? Plus it shows interest in the college or university, and not all schools use demonstrated interest. But for those that do, any little thing that you can do, like even like jumping on a webinar to learn more about the school, they keep tabs on that, and that can make an impact on a decision down the road. Some other things I think that students can kind of start working on even now, with writing samples or essays, students can kind of start getting ideas even now for it. The Common Application has 6 or 7 prompts for this year's class, and generally they're going to be the same for next year. So that might be like an assignment just to start working on, maybe just writing down ideas for each of the questions. And that way you can kind of start easing into this process. I mean, essays, I think a lot of students, it may take you a long time. You might be able to write it out in like 90 minutes. Everybody's process is different, but I think the sooner you start by kind of just becoming more familiar with it, it's not so daunting. And when it comes to recommendation letters, I mean, I always say they write themselves. So the more you participate in class, the more you ask a question every time in class, the more you ask a counselor a question, or administrator, or another teacher a question, the more we get to know you, the more we can write insights about you. Again, this criteria is also going to be used as well too, but it may be a little different for not only the 21s, but maybe even the 2022s. So when it comes to community service, yes, it's still a requirement, but through X2 Evolve, students, you should be able to have other opportunities, even to do online service as well too. And then also when it comes to activities, again, just because so many activities have been impacted, from the performing arts, to travel, to athletics, it's going to look a lot different. So I think for students, it may be more on you to kind of construct your own activities, whatever they may be. You want to read the 5 best books on mechanical engineering, or you want to read every book by Isaac Asimov, or whatever activity you feel that is like, I really want to learn more about this and really get into it, then go do it. So I think it's going to be a little bit more internal as opposed to external activities. Always the big one as well too. I'm seeing that the number of people applying for the FAFSA has dropped this year. And how is that going to play out this year? I don't know. How will that play out the following year? Who's to say? No idea. But this is part of this process, is to apply for financial aid through the FAFSA. Colleges have cost calculators through their websites as well too. So if you want to see what a particular school, say like Denison College in Ohio, costs, you go to their website. Students can also receive college-based financial aid, but also college-based scholarships as well too. There's even some schools that are, Purdue is at the forefront of it. It's called income share agreements. So it's kind of like you pay back the school on a certain percentage of your salary that you get once you graduate. So that's out there. Will it become more widespread? I don't know, but it is something to kind of keep an eye on and an ear on. And again, this kind of harkens back to retention and persistence, is that, it depends on like how long it takes to graduate. So the sooner you can get out, better off you are. And I always like to ask students to kind of consider other possibilities as well too. Gone are the days where you just kind of get a major and just get through, and that's all you need. Part of it is, having a major, maybe delving into a minor or two, maybe, kind of a combined type of program. I've heard of one college that is pretty much, you don't have a major or in this particular field, but it's like you have 4 minors. It's like math, chemistry, physics, and biology, which is kind of fascinating because, we do so many different things now. We have such a range of responsibilities. So why couldn't college look like that in terms of learning about so many different fields? Also, like high impact educational practices. That includes internships, study abroad when it becomes back open, maybe doing a capstone project. So that will be also shared on the Enrichment Friday archive. And these are some of these high impact educational practices: undergraduate research, common intellectual experiences, a lot of writing your first or second year, maybe even your third and fourth year, learning by doing, like through service learning. So I think these are some of the things to look at when you're really considering schools, like what are the differentials? Where I went to college, everybody had to do a thesis. And we also had a seminar paper, the previous year. So any schools that kind of everybody has to do this thing is probably something to kind of keep in mind. So for those in the class of 2022, I am giving you an assignment. I'm not going to give you a letter grade, but these are the items to start working on. I would say if you want to put anything like number 1, I'd say the college search information form. And do the others, and resume, kind of start on it and keep adding to it. But use this time wisely to do some good research, to get a foundation, to organize your process. Like I said, I'll start meeting with juniors as soon as I can. I'll do some additional workshops probably coming year. So stay tuned, probably through Enrichment Friday sessions, which are a great opportunity to do so. I like to call this part of my presentation a soapbox. I've been looking for a soapbox for a past decade and I cannot find one, so I'll just talk about it. And as you see in any sort of correspondence, my title is Director of College Advising. Advising is just that. Like, I advise you maybe to look at the school, to do this by this date. But that's what advice is. But it's also directing. And I'm pretty laid back when it comes to the advising part, but when it comes to directing, it's like, nope, this has to be done at this stage, at this point in time. It is what it is. As I mentioned just not too long ago, in terms of internships, plural, that to me, that's the new working resume for down the road. So employers, businesses, and companies can kind of get a good look to see what you're like in a work setting, and that, based on your academic background, that's how, it seems to be the new hiring process. And as I mentioned about deadlines, but students definitely do the work involved. You know, I've had a student one time asking me like, do you know when Towson's deadline is? I'm like, no, go look it up. You can do this. That's something that you can do. Um, and I encourage parents to have students see me with those types of questions. For parents, if you're like doing your research and you're like, hey, I found 3 different schools and one says this and one says that and one says this in terms of graduation rates for this type of major, what are your thoughts on it? Like that stuff, I'll talk all day with you about. That, to me, that's great stuff. So I think students, it's, you know, you have the work to do, and I think parents, part of your role is to kind of get your students to do that work and set deadlines and kind of encourage and motivate them through it. Students just accept it. That's what their role is. I have a sophomore in high school. She understands, but I'm not going to talk to her about every single day about college. And probably a good thing to do in terms of for students not to hear about this 24/7 is students, you set a time and day of the week to talk about college. Maybe Wednesdays from 7 to 7:15. And that's all you talk about is college, and for the rest of the week, you don't talk about college. You know, update your parents on what's going on. Parents, hey, let's go visit a college in a couple of weeks, put on a calendar. So you don't want to, again, you don't want to live this 24/7. So I think this is tough, bewildering. You're never going to have your head wrapped around it. Trust me, I've been trying to do that for 3 decades, and I'm no closer to it. But once you just kind of just start doing it and embracing it and learning and moving forward, it will start making sense at times. Again, ask questions, even though they may seem rather silly, because you're going to be seeing things that I'm not perhaps even aware of. And it is, you know, as you were looking at Ryken when you first started in 7th and 8th grade, you're kind of doing it again now. And I think the toughest part of this journey, and I'll just put this out there, is that students are really excited about it. But when it comes to like then sitting down and actually filling out the application, it's not the application that's hard. It's just now you're being asked to put on paper or online to change your identity. And nobody likes to do change, and nobody really wants to change their complete identity of everything that they've known and loved and experienced in their lives. And now we're asking to change it. So I think that is where it's tough. So I totally understand. But if you can become just a perpetual learner, you'll be fine. And I think that is, you know, to me, one of the big takeaways of this process, because this will come again when you're looking at graduate school, and it's a very different process. It's much more about the academic program you're looking at, and the name recognition doesn't matter. It's like the names will change in terms of what is the right school. And to, you know, in terms of finishing up the presentation, it's like, how are you going to create a positive narrative of your life story? Are you going to look back with regret? It's like, yeah, I should have done this. I should have done that. I ask students at the end of the year, like seniors, any advice to tell students? And it's funny because every one of them will go like super serious and will say, start early, don't wait. It's like, all right, I will pass that on. So that is what I'm passing on to you, is to start early. Okay. See, we open up the chat section to any questions. All right, who writes our recommendation letters? How many can we have? Great question. You'll have one school counselor letter. Generally, that'll be me. I've written, I think, 98 of them this fall so far. Probably got another 20 in me, which is about the average. So it's no problem. But they really write themselves. The more we know about, like more I know about students, I can add that. There'll be surveys that students will need to fill out, one for a counselor, one for a teacher on Naviance, not now, but you know, in a couple months, that we utilize to craft, as I call, letters of assessment, is what I like to call them. So generally it's gonna be one counselor, one teacher. Some colleges, JMU, Pitt, some others, they don't even want recs. I have a feeling this year into next year that they're going to probably put a little bit more focus on them to tease out some additional information. So your recs are only as good as like how well you know somebody. So generally it's going to be one teacher, one counselor rec. A handful of colleges will want a second letter. Let me backtrack to the first teacher recommendation letter. There's a bit of a process that we have in terms of the requesting and the matching process. And again, that'll be in the springtime. And that'll be covered. Going on to the colleges that require a second one, only a handful of schools do. And I basically tell students, you're a free agent. You can ask anybody that you want. Not many schools require it. So, students that you're on your own to get a second recommendation letter. And teachers are usually really good about writing a second recommendation letter. But beyond that, you're kind of spinning your wheels. Sometimes students ask for well, I can get a state representative to write one for me. Okay, do you know them? Well, no, they know my parents. And I've never met them. And they're like, yeah, then don't bother. When I was I think my first year in college admissions at the University of Delaware, I was really excited to read a recommendation letter from a certain senator from Delaware. And it's hey, there's a recommendation letter from Senator Biden. What should we do with it? And nobody even looked at me. They're like, just file it. I'm like, why? It's it's pretty much a form letter. I'm like, it is? It's go pull so-and-so's folder. I'm like, okay, so I pull it. Pretty much almost the identical letter. It's oh, okay, that's fine. So I think colleges want insight, and that's a lot of that through recommendation letters, but it's also born of what a student does, in the classroom, day in and day out. So that's just another part of the process. Other questions, feel free to post, or if you want to unmute and ask, feel free to. We only have 9 people, so it's a small group. Coming up, going back to testing a little bit. So January 26, 2021 is the date we will plan for the PSATs. So hopefully that will work in terms of testing this year. So I think for students who look at testing, when it comes to test preparation, they focus a lot on the SAT. I'd focus on the PSAT. When I say through Khan Academy, there's some PSAT test prep, maybe even through college. I want to say the College Board as well too, because if you do that, you do really well there. Again, may put you in line for students for the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. If you do well in your PSATs, generally you're going to do well in your SATs. And colleges buy names based on PSAT scores. So they may broaden their search this year more so than ever before, because not many people have had PSAT. So in years past, if okay, we're going to look for females in Oregon and Washington who have an interest in physics and 1,300 PSAT scores on up, it might be 1,250. So yeah, this search process, the mail that you get from colleges and who contacts you may change based on, PSAT results. I would also put forth another great place to put emphasis on in terms of test preparation or APs, because scores of 3, 4, and 5 can generally get credit for college level work. And if that can open up 3 to 6 credits in your schedule down the road to allow you to take an internship, which helps you get a job on down the road and graduate in 4 years, yeah, some time and effort this year for AP exams are definitely well worth it. Any questions from Carly or Lauren or Jamie or Elise or Nina? Anybody else? As Mr. Chamberlain is fond of saying, we're not solving this today. In terms of the college search process, every day is something new, as it seems. So just be flexible, adapt to change, ask questions, and I would probably even argue that the college search process doesn't really end until, for you, to end of the school year in college after your freshman year, because you've never had a second semester in college, so it's oh, it's just like first semester. Not necessarily. So again, it's a process. Respect it. it may not make sense. I had a student once who was admitted by Notre Dame and Wake Forest and denied by Colgate and Richmond. I couldn't wrap my head around that. And I asked her, and she's like, I can't figure it out. And then I said, I figured it out. And she's like, you did? It's like, yeah. It was like, if it's a 2-word school, you got in. If it's a 1-word school, you didn't. It's like, makes as good a sense as any. So don't try, and I see this every year. Some things just don't make sense. I would say if you want to read something that will make some sense of it is Jeff Salingo's Who Got In and Why. It just came out in May. A really great book in terms of insight, especially current events and how that's impacting college admissions. So if you want to read something along those lines, that's a really good book to take a look at. Other questions, concerns, issues, anxieties? That is a question I have on the College Search Information Form, so I might as well ask it now. Because to me, those are your questions. All right. All right, seems that everybody is good for the time, or I guess you're looking forward to working on those surveys and doing the research. So that is great. So yeah, as questions come up, please ask. As I said, a lot of this information will be posted on the Enrichment Friday archive. I'm glad you were able to attend and kind of get a lot of great information to go forth. It's quite the process and endeavor, but it will generally pan out really, really well. So with that, I will let everybody go and have a great weekend, and we'll be talking soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.